think it's very important for all of us to learn how to manage stress. And I think your book, I think that one of the chapters you particularly spoke about it, right? How in the past 10, 15, 20 years, the work culture in this country has just changed dramatically, right? And I know the book isn't just dead, is not supposed to only deal with work culture, but stress in general. But I'll let you do the talking rather than blabber on about the book. But let's just to kick it off on a fun note. My first question. First question for you is like there's a little bit of disturbance in your background. Is there? Uh, yeah, not
I'm in a quiet room.
perfect.
I'm
Perfect.
in a quiet room.
It might be my voice echoing, I guess.
No problem.
Yeah. Anyway, so the
These
first
are
question.
the nuances. These are the nuances of the virtual world.
Yeah,
Otherwise, maybe you and I would have been sitting in a studio together. So this is virtual life for all of us.
yeah, I guess this has become the most common catchphrase of the past year and a half. Am I audible? Your voice is cracking. I can't see you. But anything that enables communication. I mean that.
Absolutely.
Right. But Dr. Rachna, before we get into the serious stuff, just one very quick question, right? And I'm very excited to ask you this because a therapist is a person everyone opens up to, but we often don't get to hear their side of things. And so yeah, we know a lot about you through the blurb of your book, and if you look, you often write columns and what you do and what you like doing. But would you like to tell us something that you've largely kept hidden away from the public life, which can give us a bit more insight into who you are as a person?
Okay, so firstly, Siddharth, thanks for having me with you. I think we've been trying to, get together to do this for a while. And like I said, virtual world is so very different from how the real world functions. And, this is, I would say I'm very proud that we started the book pre-pandemic and we closed it in the pandemic. So we've had an amalgamation of a bit of hybrid, kind of work and to understand the side before and the side now. Actually, I'm the side in the pandemic and now, which is, I think we're closing towards an endemic state and the side now. And okay, so whilst you asked me that, is there something I would like to share, which a lot of people don't know about me? Yeah, so I think the only thing which maybe a lot of people do know who come across, in close contact with me is I'm extremely passionate about my work. Keeps me going. I love it. You can wake me up in the middle of the night and I would be like just reeking with it. So I think it's just that energy, loving your work, which keeps getting you going. And I'm very proud to also say that I have equally passionate daughter who I think sometimes when you just think, have you raised them right? Have you not raised them right? And she's an equally passionate girl, totally focused on her career, on her career path. So it feels that is something which I think not very many people know about me. So my daughter was now, of course, she's going to be 18, and she's the only footballer who's going to play Division football in the United States, and she's going to be playing now for the University of California. She's on the roster playing sports. She was the vice captain of the Indian football team. Wow. So I've only seen resilience. Yeah, so I've only seen resilience and that drive to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, 365 days of a year, not touching sweets, and complete sports person. So ulta to me. Completely been a book person. So yeah, but I think the resilience and the passion came through. So yeah, so that is something a little lesser known about me.
And I'm so glad to hear this because it's actually evident in your voice and the way your face lights up when you both talk about your work and your daughter. So it's very, very, anything you mentioned in this book also, like about a couple of your patients walking, the way you handle them when they're walking, and it's a couple of places you've described them was very evident what and when you're speaking with such passion about your work and daughter, it's clear how proud you are of both.
Absolutely. And we're sitting at the end of a working day, so I think I should be looking a little more fatigued than this. But yeah, so no, it's no, I'm telling you, it just keeps you going, and I think that's the fun of it. I think we are very blessed I am very blessed to be in a profession that I love. Right. So not very many people deal with that, and that's what partly the book is all about, because not very many people choose to be in a place where they would wish to be, or maybe they don't know it better, so yes, it's very, I'm very fortunate, and a lot of gratitude to the almighty, the energy system, whatever we may call it, to be at the right place at the right time. And right now, and being at the right place speaking to you, and I'm sure we're reaching out to a lot of young authors and writers and aspiring people, and a lot of people who may want to know how they want to manage their own day-to-day stress.
Perfect. So my question was along the lines of the fact that what is your take on it? Do you really think do you think is this a corporate thing that's being sold to people that maybe short-term stress is good for you, or is it an actual fact that short-term stress can actually help you in general in your life, not just being better at your job, but in general being able to respond to situations better, or that ability to take certain decisions better comes along with that short-term stress?
So, Siddharth, when we talk about stress, whether it's short term or long term, we basically divide stress into something called positive stress, which is eustress, EU stress, and distress. So now,
Okay.
eustress is something which is the positive stress, which is much needed. So,
Right.
for example, this little bit of stress, which we had the lag, and you had to kind of join back again, right? It creates a little bit of stress, but it's a positive stress. If we're not going to rectify it, I'm not going to get through to this show. If I'm not going to wake up in the morning, I'm not going to reach my college, I'm not going to reach my class, I'm not going to reach my workplace, I'm not going to be able to perform, I won't be able to see my patient, I will. So that is all eustress, which is a motivating stress, which is needed on a daily basis.
Right.
If I don't have that, I won't have the motivation to get up, perform. So there is an optimum level of stress which is required on a day-to-day basis. It's only when the curve tilts and it becomes distress, which is the negative stress, that is what is difficult. But having said that, today's day and environment and age, it is tough, because all of us as a population, as a race, have gone through a large amount of change, right, in the last year and a half, with the pandemic having crept in. Yes, it's absolutely a difficult. It's been a challenge, actually. And I think we should feel blessed sitting here that we're sitting in normal circumstances, at least speaking to each other normally. Nobody knew what's happening in April 2021.
Absolutely.
It was like a volcano tsunami of all sorts, which just wiped away so much of so many things. So coming back to your question, so that was negative stress, a lot of distress, right? But what do we need to do? So should we have some amount of short-term stress? Yes, some amount of short-term stress is on a daily basis. I need to get here, I need to do this, I need to get this going. It is much needed. Otherwise, I will not be productive. But what I also need to build is the resilience and the coping skill alongside the stress.
Right.
So it's nothing. It's like this cup of tea, which is got, let's say, my cup of tea is here. So these are like daily incidences which keep creating stress in my cup of life. When I add a little extra drop to this cup of tea, what is going to happen? It's just going to overflow, right?
Correct. Right.
So that is what happens. So even unknowingly, even a small stress may create something like that for us. So somebody just said something, you didn't get the right food to eat. A friend passed a comment, a co-worker said something, this will just spill over. What do I need to do is to create the resilience and the coping, that let my cup of tea have a hole here. So every time there is a stressful incident, I should be able to drain it out. So my coping skill is what needs to be worked on. So it's that is what it is all about.
Right.
And while you type, I'll just share a little bit about the book. So the book is it's now called the Mental Health First Aid Kit. It's a great book to have on your shelf, on your table. It's got lots of tips and tricks on how to manage our day-to-day stress. So we always have all of us have some sort of a book lying with us to reach out to, that what medicine should we have. It's like a first aid kit, or we have a first aid kit lying at home. Similarly, this is like a first aid kit for mental health. So sometimes when you're just feeling down and out, sometimes you're just suddenly having a lot of anxiety, or sometimes you're just questioning yourself. So there is a lot lying in the book which you can, kind of, which will guide you through. It is also, there is no gyan in the book. It's a journey. The book is a journey by itself. It's got a lot of paper pen exercises, but it's very interactive. It's got other exercises also. So for instance, let's say, you're feeling very, very uneasy on a specific day. You don't necessarily need to have to go to a therapist every time, right? We need to learn how to manage. So that is what it's talking about. So it's great that I'm going to read the question for you.
Right.
I noticed that you mentioned.
Can you hear me now? Maybe I can try reading it out.
Yes, I
So
can.
basically, what I was asking you is that it's great you mentioned coping mechanisms, and something that I noticed while reading your book is that very frequently you suggest journaling or like a diary, keep track of certain events or actions in life to help as a coping mechanism or to kind of develop more insight into who you are as a person and deal with that. So what is it? What is it about writing that that helpful or that drives you to handle your stress better?
So, journaling is a great mechanism to know yourself. It's a great method to know if it's structured journaling, and if a therapist takes you through it, and of course, like the book also gives you a few structures, tables to help you go through it. So it's fantastic to write. Sometimes it's just fantastic and very therapeutic to write a diary by yourself. So it's like you're speaking your thoughts or writing your thoughts aloud. See, what happens is, when we are thinking, about 1,000 thoughts, let's say, are coming to our head. When we start speaking, those 1,000 get converted to maybe 100. But when I start writing, that 100 gets converted to a 10. So it becomes rather structured, right? So the structure comes in. When the structure comes in, it gives me clarity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
So when I reflect back on what I've written, it will allow me to understand, how have I reached from point A to point B, or point B to point Z. So it will allow me to self-reflect. So so journaling can be a fantastic venting mechanism. So we don't need to also every time pick up the phone and speak to a friend to start pouring out. It's a great personal way towards healing yourself, where you write your thoughts. In fact, some people put down some beautiful poetry, stories, which are healing by themselves in nature. And of course, when we talk about therapeutic journaling, we also talking about writing journals for your anger, writing journals for, let's say, any habits you want to kick off, writing journals about, let's say, if there's some improvements you want to make in your life. Maybe it's for a relationship, maybe it's for work situation. Then we start mapping.
Right.
So mapping is another technique. So for example, if I want to put an intention and a goal saying that I want to take care of my anger. So until I even know how much I'm getting angry, how am I going to take care of it, right? So journaling is a beautiful method which allows me to pen down that what is it that I'm really feeling, right? So for instance, let's say if as a part of a therapeutic process, I may say that, why don't you start writing down the number of times you feel angry each day, or why do you feel angry? What is the cause? What do you end up doing? So when you reflect back and read that document a week later, somebody who thought I think I get angry maybe twice a week, when I open that and I realize, well, maybe I was getting angry not twice a week, but twice a day. So journaling allows us a great deal of insight.
Right.
It also allows facts to come out on paper.
Right. So,
and like I said, it's beautiful venting also.
Right. So, doctor, if I'm hearing you right, I understand, like from what I get, that is journaling helps you create some sort of self-awareness or give you a much deeper ability to introspect and understand where you currently stand, right? But another thing that I actually noticed again I love the approach you took for the book, right? I mean, there were these case studies which you could later on pass on tips to people about how to deal with those issues. So something that I noticed was that often it's not just about the lack of self-awareness. People somehow are able to put on the fact that there's something bothering them. But it's the ability to not communicate properly to someone or someone else. Even if there's this lack of clarity, कुछ लोग बोलते हैं कि अच्छा हमें पता नहीं मदद कर रहा है, but क्या exactly पता नहीं. So do you think there's this hesitancy in kind of communicating? I don't know. Maybe, is there a phone ringing at your end? I'm so sorry. Again.
I can't hear you clearly. The last bit.
Yeah. So what I was saying was there is often a hesitancy among people to talk about any issues that they're going through personally on a mental level, right? Maybe people
Yeah.
are very easy to talk about something that, oh, chot lag gayi, doctor ko turant dikhane jayenge. And it's not just about the taboo around therapy. Often people just struggle with the ability to express what they're actually feeling. So do you think that also exaggerates the problem in the sense that inability to communicate actually adds more to the stress of the person because it just compounds it multifold?
Well, absolutely, Siddharth, because communication is the key to everything.
Right.
So communication is the key to a good mental health, to good relationships,
Right.
to a good workplace. If I am not communicating in the correct way,
Right.
communicating does not mean that I will just vent out. There is a big difference in just venting and communicating. We need to learn how to communicate. And by the way, communication is not only verbal communication.
Right.
There's a large bit of it is non-verbal communication, right? So, for instance, let's say you commented and said, it reeks that you're very passionate about your work. How did you get that? I just said that, I'm very passionate. So if I was just to say, Siddharth, I'm very passionate about my work. So there is a large verbal component to it. If I'm telling somebody I love a person, I love you, and I'm actually just, my body language is different, I am not communicating. So communication holds the key to all our joy, happiness, relationships at every level. And more than anything, even with your own self, if I'm not clearly communicating with my own self, if I don't know what I want, like you said, clarity of thought. If I don't know what I want, I will be giving out garbled messages to people in front of me, to the universe. I will be just throwing out a lot of garbled stuff. So I need clarity of communication to myself first. See, our first relationship with anybody, which we all are forgetting nowadays, is with ourselves.
Right.
If I need to first rectify that, I need to make sure that my relationship with myself is being worked on a daily basis. Then I will be in an ability to work with my relationships with others also very beautifully. And communicating in a verbal and a non-verbal way makes a huge amount of difference. If I don't feel what I'm saying, I'm not doing justice.
Right. And you put it so beautifully, because I think a few years back, something, one of my closest friends actually sent me a quote, and it just went, if I ask you to name the things you love, how long would it be before you name yourself? And it's absolutely true that communicating with your own self and like being honest and knowing what you're experiencing and being able to tell yourself or someone around you who cares about it becomes so essential. So thank you for mentioning that. I just have one more question about the tips that you've mentioned before I actually come back to you and the book a bit. Is from the fact that another common thread that I noticed along all case studies and all your tips was the stress on sleep, on getting adequate sleep and rest. And I think that is something very important for people today, wherein regardless of whether it's for professional reasons or for just lethargy or just the dopamine hit of just constantly binging or going to social media, people are sleeping less and less every day, right? I mean, people have this habit of tending to have irregular sleep patterns, and so I mean, and there is a lot of science and a lot of pseudoscience floating around. Like there will be people floating around with, you can do 4 hours and then 2 hours in the afternoon, that get your 6 hours in total. Some would be like, no, you need an 8 hour or 7 hour one cycle sleep. So if there's just one tip or maybe like a one short sweet tip that you could give to people about their sleeping patterns, what would it be? And if you could just slightly expound on why it's very important.
So very importantly, there are certain parameters for good physical health and for good mental health. So firstly, we need to understand we can't be in good mental health if we are not in good physical health,
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
So if body mind doesn't go separately, it's a part of me, right? So having said that, there are certain parameters, for example, appetite, sleep, bowel movements. These are essentially which keep our body functioning properly, right? If I'm not going to have those parameters proper and straight, be rest assured I'm not going to be able to be in good, forget mental health, I'm not going to be in good physical health either. So there is no question of me being in good mental health if I am not sleeping well. So thereby I have a very holistic approach where I specifically talk a lot about mind, body, soul, and spirit connect, because it is this minimalistic three-pronged approach, although now we expanded to a six-pronged approach of where we talk about the social aspect, we talk about the occupational aspect, we talk about various other aspects also to give us complete wellness. But having said that, at least these three things I need to have in order to say that I'm feeling well. Now, if out of these three things I'm saying मेरा sleep ठीक ही नहीं है, then I am catching the bull, right? I'm saying, okay, let me rectify your mental health. And I'm saying I'm not even first looking into your sleep. So that's why I'm saying we need to check our lifestyle first before wanting to go anywhere. And sleep seems to be a parameter which seems to be disturbed. Why I have brought up sleep is because the moment we feel that people get stressed, 80% of the people, the sleep goes for a toss.
Correct.
So if I'm not going to sleep well one night, I'm not going to feel good the next day. I will not, if I don't sleep well 2 nights, I'm going to be cranky. If I don't sleep well 3 nights, I will be crying and fighting, So I may as well set that right as well. So thereby we have given a lot of tips on sleep hygiene, how to make sure that your sleep is right so that at least it reflects on our moods.
Right. Exactly. So, okay. Now I'll just before we wrap this up, I have one final question for you, and that's actually a very interesting one because you mentioned this is your first book, right? And
losing you again. So that losing you again.
Okay. Is this better? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is quite simple, actually. What made you choose this format, right? I mean, this is something I always ask people who are writing for the first time. Why books? Why not like a blog or maybe a YouTube channel with videos or I don't know a documentary? Why the written word? As much as I love it, as much as I loved reading your book, and I personally would have consumed it the best in this particular form. But there are a lot of people out there who can like ways of getting such information through to them, right? Particularly when it's a non-fiction book, when it deals with very particular direct things at hand. Why not in that format? And just the second part of the question, how was this journey? I mean, if you're writing for the first time, I'm actually very, very curious to know because a lot of writers would talk about how it comes naturally to them, but I like to think that writing is an art, it's a skill, it involves a lot of passion, involves a lot of work on the person's part, and I used to be tell it was a super easy process, but I'm pretty sure the process was challenging, and I was about that.
So yeah, just to answer the second part of your question first. So it wasn't easy at all. And so writing, yes, thinking, speaking comes super naturally to me, but writing is an art. And as much as I've loved it, but it is very intensive to write a book. So I all of so many years I've been writing columns and blogs, and I'm the columnist to Times of India as well. So I do the weekly Ask the Expert online section with them. So I've been doing it for years. And it's just that when Bloomsbury approached me, said that, you've been doing so many columns, why don't you start putting it together? I said, okay, let me give it a shot. Book is not something that simple. And it genuinely wasn't. It took a lot of work from me, my team members, senior team member Dr. Rashi with me. We were at it for months, and it was taxing to go through, picking cases to see what was the best, because we wanted to have it there is no gyan I wanted to give anybody. I just wanted to tell people that these are real stories of real people. Of course, the names are changed and it's all confidential, and there some of them are, bits and pieces of cases put together. But I just wanted to tell everybody that you're not alone. People are facing this all over. Things like extramarital affairs in the office, sexual harassment. We've touched on all of that, how to deal with it, or having a getting obese just sitting by your on your chair all through the day, drowning cups of tea and
Yeah.
coffee. I don't. I don't. I'm very specific about the amount of caffeine I take. I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying that, so all of that uh, put together, knowing that, we difficult lifestyles. So all of that put together, we were seeing it every day. And I also visit a lot of corporate houses where we have counseling cells running. And I would not like to name any, but so we saw what we started to see was over the years, I saw the patterns being the same.
Right.
Different corporates, we used to go, once a week to one, once a week. My team would go. When we would see the cases, we would see, my God, the patterns of all human beings are the same. So thereby I thought, why not start penning it down? Everybody was, getting sucked into office politics. Everybody was complaining about how they did the job and somebody else got the credit. Everybody was complaining about somebody having, having leering at them or else jumping into an affair. There was so much going on in the working world. And I thought another aspect which, Bloomsbury and we would keep brainstorming, and then we thought that why not create like a prep book for people who haven't yet gone into the real working world? Because we have a lot of kids interning with us, we have a lot of people, we see a lot of people, we see a lot of family, friends, people, or and of course clients and patients. People are just think that's a rosy picture. Once you get a job, okay, and then it's great to have lots of cups of tea and coffee on the aisle. The corporate culture seemed so great when it came in. But having said that, what the nuances it comes with is also needs to be somewhere told. So that's why we put it together in a narrative. It's a narrative where there's stories, and at least it's interesting. And then from the characters, we've kind of chosen that, the characters, to give them the therapeutic process and help them through and through. So that's the beauty of the book. And I think that's also the USP. It's an interesting read.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Rashna. With that, we've come to the end of this session. I'm really sorry
Thank
about
you.
all the technical difficulties, but this was genuinely lovely talking to you. And to everyone out there, please pick up your copy of Stress Diaries. I personally vouch for it, for the fact that I've read it, and I'll just take a minute to rant here because I've been to therapy a couple of times, and I've benefited from therapy in general, and I found a lot of the things that I picked up from the book really helpful. I've been trying them out the past few days, and yeah, in general, it doesn't really take much after the first shift to feel that they are actually affecting you a lot. So, to everyone out there, whether you're working already in corporate or not, or whether maybe in your grad, undergrad, or trying to just figure out your life, trying to figure out how to handle stress, this is the book for you. Please check it out. It's published by Bloomsbury. And thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, for this time, and thank you for all of you people who joined in. And thanks so much. And I'm so glad you liked the book, and it feels good to be appreciated. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Okay. Bye bye.